If I asked you to name 5 of the biggest construction equipment manufacturers in the world, you could probably rattle off Caterpillar, Komatsu, John Deere, maybe Volvo, and Bobcat if you're feeling frisky. But you're wrong, numbnuts. 2 of the top 4 biggest construction equipment manufacturers on Earth are Chinese. And I'd bet a surprising amount of money that most American contractors couldn't name either one. But before we get into that, welcome back to another episode of Downtime presented by Conequip Parts, where if you have downtime, you might as well spend it with us. And if you need heavy equipment parts, you should absolutely, definitely, positively get them from Conequip Parts. Why don't you give us a call anytime you need, 716-836-5069, or, hop online and do a little bit of online shopping, conequip.com/shop. We've got what you need at the prices that you like. The Chinese manufacturers we're talking about is XCMG and SANY. Okay, to be fair, people might know SANY around these parts, but XCMG sounds less like an equipment company and more like one of those strong suggested passwords. How am I supposed to remember my strong password if your suggestion is something like CGN, #, KL, exclamation point.
This went on for another 15 minutes. Let's fast forward to the end.
Question mark. But here's the crazy part. XCMG is the 3rd largest construction equipment manufacturer in the world. SANY is the 4th. Together, they're roughly the size of Komatsu globally. And yet, here in the United States, most contractors have never even sat in one, let alone heard of one. How can companies dominate almost everywhere else while barely making a dent in America's construction market? Well, it's starting to change. For years, Chinese equipment has had a reputation, and not a good one. Cheap, questionable quality, parts that were hard to find and even harder to actually receive. The kind of machine that teaches you patience, whether you want to learn it or not. Today's Chinese manufacturers aren't the same companies that they were 15 years ago. SANY started back in 1989, making welding materials before becoming the world's largest concrete equipment manufacturer. And XCMG actually dates all the way back to 1943, originally producing military equipment before transitioning into construction machinery. Today they build just about everything. Excavators, wheel loaders, cranes, motor graders, mining trucks, fire trucks. Basically, if it weighs 20,000 pounds and eventually leaks hydraulic oil in the worst possible spot, they probably make one. Globally, Caterpillar still owns the crown with about 16% of the worldwide market. Komatsu sits comfortably in second, and then comes XCMG, SANY, then Deere. So on paper, these aren't startup companies trying to break into the industry. They're already industry giants, which makes the US numbers even weirder, because in America, SANY ranks 13th in new financed equipment sales. XCMG doesn't even crack the top 15. That's a massive disconnect. How do you go from basically 3rd in the world to almost non-existent in the biggest equipment market on the planet? Part of the answer comes down to where Americans actually spend their money. And no, it's not Red Bull and gas station sandwiches. We're talking equipment purchases. Most people think excavators run the industry. And guess what? They don't. The big name is compact track loaders. Compact track loaders account for over 36% of all new financed construction equipment in the US. Mini excavators are another 22%. Together, if you can do basic math, those 2 categories make almost 60% of that entire market. Until late 2024, SANY didn't even have a compact track loader for North America. Think about that. The biggest Chinese brands were trying to win America while not even competing in America's biggest equipment category. That's like trying to win a NASCAR race without even bringing a car. Bold strategy, Cotton.
It's a bold strategy, Cotton. Let's see if it pays off for them.
But you guessed it, everything changed. In November of 2024, SANY unveiled their ST230V, their very first compact track loader for North America. And honestly, the specs surprised a lot of people. Around 73 horsepower, almost as much as my 1991 Mazda Miata. That has 91. Over 10,000 pounds operating weight, almost as much as your mom. Higher rated operating capacity than Caterpillar's incredibly popular Cat 255. On paper, SANY came to play. This bad boy is a contender and it's not here to get embarrassed. Neither is XCMG. Their XC7-TV12 track loader actually posts a class-leading tipping load while coming in at roughly $65,000 brand new. Meanwhile, a comparable Cat can push well into the $80,000 range. And unless you're like Bruno Mars and can release one sweet single with Lady Gaga to clear up your debt, it's a lot of cash. You can't even say that's still cheap junk. That's a legitimate competition, especially when both companies are running Yanmar engines, which, by the way, isn't exactly some mystery engine that nobody has heard of. Bobcat uses them, Kubota uses them. Yanmar has earned its reputation. So the old argument that Chinese equipment uses questionable engines, it doesn't really hold much water in this size class anymore. Mini excavators tell a similar story. SANY's SY35U and XCMG's XE35U both need cooler names, but both use nearly identical Yanmar engines, nearly identical digging specs, and nearly identical reach. The biggest difference is price. You can find some brand new SANY mini excavators for under $50,000 with a 3-year warranty. That's not accidental. SANY knows what the biggest weakness is: trust. So instead of them asking customers to just trust them, they're trying to warranty off onto the green. That's a golf joke.
That was good. Oh my God.
Now, a lot of people still think Chinese equipment gets built overseas, thrown on a ship, and hopefully shows up eventually, but that's becoming less true every year. SANY has a $60 million facility in Peachtree City, Georgia, where it assembles excavators. They're also building a massive distribution center and customer support hub near the port of Wilmington in North Carolina. We also had the pleasure of conducting an interview with the president of SANY Canada, Mike. Shout out Mike, where they provided very valuable insights into the quality of their machines. Check that out on the Conquest channel. XCMG's North American headquarters, you ask? Lawrenceville, Georgia. Even Caterpillar assembles excavators in Georgia, so if your sales pitch is, yeah, but ours is built in America, there's a decent chance SANY also built in America, just down the road. So the talking point doesn't quite hit like it used to. How peachy is that? And then we get to talk about everybody's favorite, tariffs, which somehow gets even weirder. You'd think tariffs would absolutely crush Chinese manufacturers. Instead, Caterpillar expects tariff-related costs measured in billions of dollars, partly because Cat exports into China, partly because they source components globally. And their response? Raise prices, simplify machines, even introduce lower cost models like the Cat 320 GC to compete with lower priced equipment. And that's not something a company does when it's feeling perfectly comfortable. That's something a company does when it knows somebody's breathing down its neck. So if the machines are competitive, the prices are attractive, and the warranties are longer, and some of them are even assembled here, why hasn't everybody switched? That's simple. Dealers, not horsepower, not bucket breakout, not operating weight. Dealers. Caterpillar has roughly 2,500 branch locations across the U.S. SANY, that's fewer than 150, and XCMG, that's right around 100. And that's the main difference. When your excavator decides today is the day that it's going to financially ruin you, you're not asking who's got the nicest brochure. You're asking who's got the hydraulic pump sitting on the shelf 30 minutes away that will get me back to work. Cat doesn't just sell equipment. They're selling the confidence that you'll be back working tomorrow morning. And that is incredibly difficult to beat. Cat often advertised 2-day repairs with the parts next day on common repairs. And if that doesn't work out, you actually get paid. So where does this all go? I don't think Caterpillar suddenly gets knocked off the throne. I don't even think that's close. They're far too massive. But I do think the middle of the market is going to start to get squeezed. If SANY keeps expanding dealers, keeps assembling equipment here, keeps improving support, and keeps coming in 20% cheaper, they're going to be harder and harder to ignore. Rental companies will probably be the first domino to fall. Once contractors start seeing these machines on rental lots, they'll stop being that weird Chinese excavator. They'll just become another excavator, I guess. And honestly, that's probably the biggest hurdle they've got left, because the machines have already arrived and they're just going to have to convince the American contractors that they're worth betting a job site on. And over the next 5 years, that might end up being one of the biggest battles in the construction equipment industry. But that's going to do it for today's episode. Let us know in the comments if you're a lucky owner of a SANY or XCMG machine, or get a hold of us at 716-929-5066. But of course, come back next week to enjoy your downtime with Downtime.
Let me tell them, downtime, it's about time. Big bad problem, trying to strip it down line. Downtime, turning all the cash to dirt. Downtime, getting us back to work.